Is it possible to date well God's way? No trying before you're buying.
You're a bit of an extremist.
I am. Back in the day, it was taboo. Do you remember that? Like if you met someone online, it was like,
Ooh. It's very far and few in between where people are abstaining from sex as they are dating.
If your identity is in a relationship, you're going to make bad decisions.
Yeah.
You're at a deficit. I always wanted this, a girl that was...
There were moments where you had to really no, it's like, that's not okay.
All the stuff we're saying now, they're good with that. The biggest part where the wheels fall off is no sex before marriage. We're rolling.
We are rolling. Well, welcome back to...
Hold on a second. Let's do that welcome again.
Do it again. Take number 2. All right. So welcome back to episode 2 of Relationships, the relationship series here at People Church. We are going to... What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about, is it possible...
Ooh.
Is it possible to date well God's way these days? Like, can you do a relationship in biblical standards today, or is the Bible just so old and out of date?
Outdated.
It's just
irrelevant.
We're far more educated and smarter these days,
Right.
and
Apparently.
we've just outgrown it. And is it possible? Is there hope? I don't know, all those things. Every time we talk to a lot of the, there's my phone. When we talk to a lot of the people, it just seems to be this, I think that is a real question. Like, can this be done? Like,
Can it
how
be
do you
done?
do this? Like, can I find someone that loves God and is a match? And how does that work? This is so different to the way we've done it. So,
And doing it well,
yeah.
by definition, what does that even mean? To do something well by some kind of standards? Because to some, dating well could look one way, but we're looking at this through the biblical lens, the standard.
So I think we're going to talk about dating apps. What are our thoughts on them? How's that work? Sex before marriage. If you're trying not to have it, how do you date? How do you approach someone in church?
Yeah.
What's that look like? How do you date? Do you date two people? Is there a cooling off period when you date one person in church and then to the next? And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And do you still date when you're married? And maybe we'll save it for another podcast, but can you turn a marriage around today?
That's a great question.
There's options. You could just leave.
Right.
It's just go. And when do you go? What's the Bible say about that? And how do you walk that out as a Christian? All the questions, all the thoughts, all the things. And then we got some questions that we're going to kind of dive into as well. So welcome. It's so good to have you. Chris is my wife.
Audrey.
And Odza. And we've been together for 18 years married, 22 years together.
Yep.
I was only 20, young, impressionable. She was 21. I just want to put it out there that
here we go.
when you were in college,
Yeah.
I still would have been in high school.
Yep. There you go.
Do with that what you will. Do with that what you will. I don't know what that says. I know it says something to me, communicates something to me.
What does that actually
Oh,
communicate?
come on, stop it. Here I was.
Do share.
Here I was, just young, praising in church, trying to get my life right. And here comes Audrey at 21 from college. It's a bit of a flex. At least in high school it would have been. We're only 11 months apart, but that's nothing.
Yep. All right.
You love it.
I love it. It's great.
How do you cope with, who's more serious out of the two of us?
I definitely think you're the more serious one.
Okay, whatever. I think I'm not as serious, but you're a better time at a party, I think.
Really?
You're a good time.
No way. Okay, wait. Stop.
Oh, wait, stop.
Tell me more.
I think you're a good time at a party. You are like, it was my birthday party, and I don't know how this happened, but like the guys and I are downstairs, we're talking about the golf semi, and then all of a sudden they're saying deep things, and up here
They're
all we can
encouraging
hear,
you.
they're encouraging
coming
me
around you.
It was amazing.
Giving you
Like that's a
words.
subject men that know how to speak life to men. But meanwhile, upstairs it's just crazy, and I come up, and usually you don't listen to hip hop or anything. Like Odds is more like
no. There's
you need to
there's
redeem
a different
yourself.
there's
You need to
Yeah, party Audrey is
Party
a thing.
Audrey, I come upstairs and you're on a chair and you're like dancing and all
Wow.
your girls like, and I was like, Audrey's a good time.
You know,
Party Audrey's a good time. You'll dance. I mean, obviously you'll dance like, ooh. But I mean, you're just like out there. And I'm a bit more like.
But you warmed up to it. You got on the
Warmed up
dance
to it.
floor and it was a good time.
Yeah.
It was a good birthday.
Gio warmed up to it. Gio,
Everyone
Gio
did.
had moves.
It was great.
Anyway, I just said that because before you're wanting to get into it and you got your serious eyes on.
No, I'm
and
good.
I'm
I'm great.
Anyway,
Let's relax.
we're gonna waste a lot of time. It's 39 minutes already.
All right.
People want to know things. All right. I don't know. Where do we start?
Should we go to the
You
question?
lead us. Do you? Yeah. You know what? Take us. Where is it going to go? I don't know what the questions are, but I think it's a good subject. A lot of people
Okay.
don't know how to date.
All right. Well, thoughts on dating apps?
Dating apps. I only know whatever I pick up as, and I can infer from like conversations or. Can someone look up when was the first dating app? Let's just see when the first dating app. Because you and I, we met in 2002.
No, 2003.
2003.
Yep.
And then we were married like 2.5 years later, I think, right? 2005, 2006.
2006 we were married.
Something like that. So we missed that whole thing. And then even as youth pastors, I think it was coming out, but back in the day it was taboo. Do you remember that? Like if you met someone online, it was like, ooh.
It's risque.
Wow. Do you know that they're not murderers?
Yeah.
Basically. That was like what it was. So when was the first?
1995,
Wow,
95.
Huh, Match.com. When do you think, I feel like it became popular sometime, like super popular. I'm thinking after 2010.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like 2010, it was an acceptable standard. You weren't like, I don't know. That's
I feel like dating apps for me are a little bit, I don't know. I don't know if controversial should be the word, but I think it works for some and it definitely doesn't work for other people. I know people that are happily married, have children, love each other, living the dream.
Yeah, they obviously
and
work.
They met.
People get married.
Yeah, they do.
Do you think there's something we miss because of dating app culture?
I mean, you mean the in-person experience of walking across the room?
Yeah, there's something
flirting
about
nature
the
and
courage.
The courage, okay.
Could you say that maybe there's a certain, I don't know, I'm a romantic. I think there's something cool about you are worth walking across the room, for. Like I think there's, or even better, like if it's not just, and not just across the room, like, okay, there's the easier way of like you're at a bar or a club together, but what about you work at an office and you don't know her and you've got to walk across? I think there's something,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think there's something cool about that. I think there's something romantic and maybe you miss that.
You have, obviously there's a lot of guys in your world. Like what's the word on the street when it comes to dating apps? Like what's their experience? Do they share the same opinion of walking across the room, the courage part?
I don't know, like, so I got like a few grow groups, right? Or at least two. And one of my grow groups, they're not the kind of guys that I think use dating apps.
Okay.
So I don't think it's like completely just a today thing. Like I think they're just far more like walk across the room kind of guys, like more than anything.
Okay.
But I think I've met heaps of people in church that's their story and that's their avenue.
Right.
And I get it. Like, I don't think there's anything evil
Right.
or, I think anything is more what you make of it. But I do think it's different. I do think accessibility is a thing. And then not all apps are created equal. Like, obviously there are some apps with intention to just hook up. Yeah. So that's a whole nother thing. So I think you got to distinguish the difference between hookup culture and maybe how like apps make that better and easier.
Right.
And I think you got to figure out that I think people are just trying to like figure it out. I mean, I think it's a kind of cool concept if you think about it. Although I would be a real hopeless, terrible dating app candidate.
Why is that?
Because like, I think humbly, I'm pretty witty. like in person, and I can,
Yeah.
there's rapport, right?
Yeah.
I suck at writing.
Oh.
Like, when people send you a funny text or a like little witty little text response, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
But in person, you can hold it in. Yeah.
This stuck on loading
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah.
And then when I have to write like a bio about myself, I don't know what I read some people, you're witty, you write things well. I'm just saying, if it was me, I'm also not, I don't think I'm photogenic. I think some people are better in person. I'm an in live kind of person, right. I think. See what I mean?
But
and I think that, photos would have been crazy.
There's
awkward.
a lot of catfishing that's going on out there, I think. I mean, probably. There must be. Okay,
a guy in church said that he got spiritually catfished.
No, wait, that's a thing?
I don't know, babe. Wow. You did not spiritually catfish me, but apparently he was like, it's when people are offering like, hey, I'm super deep and spiritual, and then all of a sudden it's a bit more physical.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And spiritually catfish.
Okay, so what about this scenario? So there's,
beard catfish.
In
Be careful if they have a beard. If the men have a beard, you don't know if they've got an actual strong jawline underneath.
Okay.
Could be beard catfished.
Yep. Great point. So.
All right. I'll reel it in.
I think, okay, so this scenario, like church context, girls, guys, I'm not really connecting with anyone here, my workspace, in my social life. There's really, no great prospects. I'm a little desperate. Should I get on an app?
It sounds like a bit of a shot at someone.
What are your thoughts?
Are you rushing romance maybe? Is that fair? Like, obviously not,
but what if you're like...
People meet online. Yeah. And that's good. Look, I think it's fine. I think you go for it. I think it's cool. I think there is probably some element to like, it feels like you're at a constant speed dating situation. You know what I mean? Like, kind of thing, like swiping. But I don't know. Ultimately, I think if you get to be in front of people and, that's a good thing.
For me, the advice that I give and the counsel that I give around that certain like scenario would be, okay, yes, go for it if you feel like you can behave or handle yourself well, meaning don't lower your standard, don't lower your bar, don't exaggerate and embellish who you are either, and stay true to that. Because I think what happens is that you find someone and they're great, but they're not maybe meeting you on a foundational level or just at a level that makes sense for you in your season of life. And that's where you start compromising.
Does that mean that tech is like money, where it takes on the personality of, it takes on your personality and it takes on your character? Because I don't think that obviously the dating app's not the problem.
Right.
Like if you're lowering your standards just because there's accessibility, you don't have the standard.
Right. So there's a flaw there.
Yeah. So maybe it just reveals, and obviously we shape tech. So tech is always going to go towards our propensities and proclivities. So like maybe that's just what that is. But I do think that it brings us back anyway, that maybe the day and age we live in is going to expose you quicker.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to get caught out quicker. Like if you've got a lack of values or you don't believe in yourself, or maybe, maybe you could make mistakes quicker because it's accessible.
Yeah.
Because it's right there.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. I think it definitely means, I think you got to know what you want, man, period. And I think you got to build, if you build your life, if your whole dream and your life, I get you want to be married. I get that. That's awesome. And this is going to tie into the, can you date well? But like anytime you want something too bad, you're already like, it owns you. And if you want marriage too bad, if you want all that too bad, you're just already in trouble. Because I think you're building your whole dream around it. You build your whole personality around it. And I think there are those that like feel called to be a stay-at-home mom, or, be a husband's a big part of who they're going to be. That's cool. But I think that, I think we forget that the construct of marriage is not the goal. It won't save you. It won't make you better. It won't make you happier. marriage is a matter of ingredients and you are 50% of that picture. And if you're not a good ingredient, if you're not a good ingredient, you don't even know how to pick a good ingredient.
Yeah.
You like, one thing you and I were speaking about once, we were talking about like friends that kept picking, like they would go from one church that was like falling apart. It would fall apart. And then they had like this wide open space of churches to pick in the city. And we're like, that's a good church. That's a good church. That's a good church. And they'd pick the one church that we were like, why are you going there? Like, and that's maybe weird to say. It's a reality of life in churches and stuff. But I feel like you got friends like that with relationships too. And I think at the end of the day, you will pick someone out of where you are. And I think if you're broken and you got your own ideals and situations, like, what do you think of girls that like, I get the bad boy thing is like a thing, right? But what do you think about girls that only seem to go for guys that treat them bad?
I think could potentially be stemming from a wound. Something happened to them at some point in their life. That's an experience. They've experienced something, whether in their childhood, their teenage years. And I think there's like a big wound there, a deep wound. And I think it may be a dad wound. It could be a mom wound. I mean, there's no greater wound. I mean, wounds are wounds, but the ones inflicted by parents, those are really hard to reconcile.
We've seen it with our kids, the natural draw with the boys to you and you to the boys and me to Rivy and Rivy to me. Like, so I do think the mum and dad thing is huge.
Yes.
They are your first reference point.
Yes.
For things. And I think maybe I think they mislabel through experience that is maybe subpar and broken, the difference between strength in a man and being treated poorly as strength.
Yeah. I mean, I think if a girl was ignored and mistreated by their dad, I think there's a wound there. There's a longing to be noticed. There's a longing for affection. There's a longing to be, to be loved and wanted. And I think, like you said, we typically attract or are attracted to the things in us that haven't been made whole. And I think because there's that wound there, I think you're looking for love in all of the wrong places to either fill that wound, or the only way that you can possibly feel love or feel loved is by being in a relationship where there's someone who isn't giving it to you in that way. And I think that's a big thing. I think you date, you seek, you long for things and people and places from a deficit, from a place where there's just emptiness. Yeah. And I've seen it. I've sat across from so many girls who've had, their father issues and have had relationships that have literally thrown them into some pretty turbulent times. And a lot of these relationships mirror some of the past. Yeah. And they're in cycles and they don't even realize it. And so unless you become whole and you address the wounds and you address not only the wound, but where the wound was inflicted and where when it happened, you almost go back there. Yep. And you address it and you go deep and you do the work. I feel like that wound is always going to, like we say, whatever you don't confront will always confront you. Yep. And sometimes the things that internally are in a really unhealthy place, we tend to try to fill that with something that is unhealthy, like a relationship.
Okay, what do you say to the subject, right? Where sometimes we're in a city that is not really known for being, huge church population. It's definitely super liberal in its ideals. And, a lot of the people that come to church and get saved are again saved at an older age, in the 20s, 30s, 40s. And there's a legitimate question. Can I date God's way? Is it even relevant? What do you say about today? Can you date God's way? Is it still relevant? Is God's way still relevant today?
I think God's way is definitely relevant. But I think it's hard for people to date like that. I think it's so hard. Is
it that hard? Or is it, okay, all right, let me ask you this. do you believe dating that way is hard? Or is it that people refuse to get on the same page or can't get on the same page through lack of maybe understanding, transformation? Is it hard, or do we make it harder than it needs to be?
I think it's both. I think people make it harder than it is because I think the heart wants what it wants. I think people want what they want. And if there's not a conviction or if there's not a fundamental core value there that aligns with biblical values, I think you're always going to cave to your, what you want, right? But I think it's hard. I think it's hard because I think you've got people that are living different experiences through their life, traumas, abuse, just brokenness, becoming who they are and getting their identity from the environments that they've been raised in. And I think that, you long for relationships because you're hoping that the relationship is going to fix you and mend you.
And that's that's when we were talking this, so I just asked that question. What I think is, again, okay, yeah, it is hard because the heart wants what the heart wants, the flesh wants what the flesh wants.
Right.
But again, I think it comes back to, without God, you're at a relational deficit.
Right.
And I think that you're searching to fill something, and you're hoping that a relationship will be your savior.
Yes.
Like, I think you're hoping it fills your gaps and your loneliness and all the things. And I was actually going to ask you, like, what do you say about, is it possible to, what do you say to people that find their whole identity in a relationship? Like, whoever they're dating, that's who they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, biggest Cubs fan now that they're dating a Cubs fan.
Yeah, I think people lose themselves, or they're already lost and they're even
trying to find themselves
in relationships. And I think that's very dangerous. I think it's very dangerous because I think God has, designed and fashioned everyone uniquely to bear an identity in him, to live a life that is glorifying of who he is. And I think when all of that is projected onto a person and then you get lost in that, I think that's...
Yeah. It's one of my red flags when I see people that we know that are dating, or if I've had friends over the years that all of a sudden they start sharing the same mannerisms. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they go into it. One loves sushi, and now they love sushi, and they talk the same and they act the same. Why do you think
they do that? Why do?
Because this is the thing. Why do people do that? I think the minute you get married, it changes. I reckon the thing that changes in marriage is that the game.
They're not going anywhere.
Got him. Like they're in.
They're in.
So all of a sudden
I can be myself.
You used to love rugby.
But I gotta say that
you used to love
all right,
watching rugby.
Say it again. I don't think the people heard.
Oh, hi, Buffy. She's back.
Okay.
Sorry.
I thought I could be into it. I liked it for a little minute. But then the thing with you is that you've got these passions that take over your whole life and become everything. And so I wasn't just ready to surrender all of my life's passions.
That's not that deep. Take it easy.
You're a bit of an extremist.
I am.
You're an extremist.
But I wasn't asking you to be an extremist. But anyway, we've gone off topic. It's getting personal. We'll talk to someone about it on a lounge. But people change. They do change, because I do think the chase is over. And that's the power of it too. If you want to sit there and say that the commitment on paper doesn't matter, you talk to anybody that has gone from dating for years and then there's paper. The security of commitment means that you fully meet the person you committed to at that point. And then I think there's a lot of I'm still vying for the job. I think dating is a very long interview.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you're right, because we've sat across from many couples across the many years of ministry. And once they get married, it's like everything just falls apart. Everything is, she's crazy all of a sudden.
She's crazy.
And he's passive, or he's disengaged, and you're like, wow, this is the kind of stuff you want to.
But this is really key, I think, in can you date well God's way. I think there are, obviously God's got intention with every part of his plan and process, and I think there is something really good about the hold back and looking for fruit. I think wisdom that was given to me that I think is great is run your hardest, and then look at the ones around you at that pace.
Yeah.
That are running there despite you, before you. You know what I mean? Because I've watched so many people raise their commitment level. I mean, if I told you the amount of people in church that I watch all of a sudden get interested, never volunteered, but they love a volunteer, and all of a sudden they're on the same team, they're running the same way, or get in trouble, never come to church, but the minute the relationship's in trouble, one of them's a Christian, the one that, let's say, messed up wasn't a Christian, that person all of a sudden uber interested in church to win them back. Like, I think the interview thing, no one's ever written a bad resume. Ever.
Yeah.
And I think the resume is always out there. And that's why I think, like, if your identity is in a relationship, you're going to make bad decisions.
Yeah.
You're at a deficit. And if you're watching somebody shift and mold to who you are to win you over, find someone that you like for who they are and watch if that makes you better, if you make them better. But I think you got to watch that. And that's outside of, like, I mean, we got to talk on so much, and we still got.
I think dating well, if you're going to do it God's way, biblically, I think it's two people with a commitment, 100% commitment to do it God's way. I don't think one can be at 80% and the other at no,
definitely not
100% or whatever, however you want to play that out. I think it requires 100%, and it requires two people to be fully surrendered to Jesus. Yeah. Because without a surrendered life, I don't know that you'll date well. You will cross boundaries. You will make mistakes. You'll go off of the resume that's written perfectly.
Fully. And to me, that doesn't, like, some people could hear that and go, that's so religious. To me, it just sounds like wisdom. And this is why. Like, if I meet you and you are the only moderator of your behavior, of your morality, of your growth, and of all that, like, it's just you. Yeah. That's scary to me. Yes. You don't have something else or someone else. Like, that to me is crazy, because, like, that person is not in any way set up for growth and movement and shift. And I think, how many times have we had massive arguments or fights or ongoing cycles in our marriage? Yes. And you couldn't change me. Like, you couldn't talk me out of it. I couldn't talk you out of it. If it wasn't for God talking to you or talking to me. Right. Like. Yes. And I don't care how transparent you are, you just don't live all your marriage out in front of people, because you don't live with people. Right. So the only version they get is the version you tell. Yes. That you're willing to tell. And I think that is, like, a thing. Okay, let's talk about us a little bit. So when we first got married, our mantra at the time was that we would push each other to strength over comfort. Yeah, I forget that. That's true. And I think about that so much, because we've lived that our whole marriage, essentially, because you go in thinking you're good, you're surrendered, you got a relationship with Jesus, you go to church, you're living your life with a lot of purpose, and then all of a sudden you're living with somebody that, like, now it's the becoming one, it's the clashing, it's the constant working towards becoming one, it's calling each other out, it's seeing the weaknesses, it's covering, it's praying, it's conversation, it's tough love, it's going through hardships together, and I think if you don't have a partner that knows you well enough to love you for who you are, but also love you for who you are becoming, and where, like, ultimately, like, the growth in us or in all of us, right? I just think that's a dangerous place to put yourself if you don't have somebody that's going to push you to a place of, like, no, your best day. No, there's more for you. No, I think about myself. I was very emotional, and I was very in my head. I was reluctant. I was very, very introverted. Yeah. And I think you helped me just come out of that. Like, you challenged me, and you loved me in those moments. But there were moments where you had to really, like,
no, it's like, that's not okay, you know? And I think about that aspect of being in a relationship, that you can't just like, the person you marry is not the person that, you know, when you come into like your 5, 10, 15, 20th year, they should look a little bit different.
Yeah, they should. Yeah,
there should be growth. But I think that you have to have that open relationship of communication and pulling things out in each other, you know? And I think sometimes marriages don't last because they've become complacent.
Yeah.
Or they just can't be bothered picking a fight and trying to grow and grow each other.
Be more scared if you don't fight. If you don't fight, you're not being honest.
Yeah.
I don't mean like it has to get crazy, but I'm just saying, like, if you don't have disagreements as part of you, and we've just seen it more often than not. And that might not be everyone else's reality, but it's been my experience.
Yeah.
And we've known couples that have been like, yeah, we don't fight. And that's cool for 7 years, 10 years, 20 years. And then all of a sudden it always ends up coming out.
Yeah.
One person felt a certain type of way and they cared more about keeping the peace than building strength.
Right.
And I just think you gotta have some discussions. So
yeah.
we're running out of time here, and I'm thinking about, okay, I think the biggest subject when people go, can you date God's way? I think the advice we preach, like that everyone loves, is like, you know, all the stuff we're saying now, they're good with that. The biggest part where the wheels fall off is no sex before marriage. That's where it's craziness.
Yeah.
No trying before you're buying.
Yeah.
That is where it's like, this is just stupid. And I think my first thought or question is, people think that sexual appetite is simply innate. And I do think it is, like, and we'll talk about that in the marriage one.
Yeah.
What do you do when, as a married couple, you have different sexual appetites?
Yeah.
What does that look like and needs? But I don't think people account for how much of their current sexual appetite is because of what they've been feeding themselves. So it definitely feels impossible that you could go without it. Yeah. And look, I'm not going to say it's ever easy, and it shouldn't be, right? If you're dating someone, you're like literally cruising through this. Yeah. Not attracted at all. That's a red flag. Yeah. But I do think that if you're used to a certain lifestyle, you have wired your brain different. I mean, there are studies right now that will talk about pornography rewiring your brain and shifting what is a goal of pleasure and all these things. And people apparently, like, and this is, we're going there, I guess, but like erectile dysfunction at an early age is off the charts because men have been so trained to, basically, they've been so exposed to pornography that they no longer get aroused by actually being in the act. They get aroused by watching it. So like there are huge effects that go well beyond your faith community, no matter what your faith is. Like it is just becoming a thing, right? Yeah. TED Talks galore on it. Like it's just a thing. So I think people just don't realize that there's a lot to this subject. Yeah. And that dating well isn't simply because you're trying to please God and not make him angry. Fixing this area of your life is getting it ready for the rest of your life. Right. You know what I mean? Like it's getting it ready for marriage. And I think that that's something that, what are your thoughts on, I don't know, dating? Just quick facts, quick thoughts on sex before marriage. Can it be done? What was it like for us? Yeah. Journey towards that. You dated before me. What was it like there? Yeah. How does that work? I think that in our current like day of leading a church and sitting across from people and hearing people's stories, it's very far and few in between where people are abstaining from sex as they are dating. And I think there's more people obviously out there that are doing it than not. And I think it's just hard. It's hard because you've been living away in a lifestyle for so long. Like you said, you're so used to it. Your brain is wired in that way. Like it's just part of
what you do. It's part of the routine. It's part of your weekends. It's part of
That's how some people feel loved.
That's how people, and that's how people.
It's how some people actually, their whole strategy to not having someone cheat on them.
Yes.
Is making sure that they're fulfilled sexually.
Yes.
So now you're just going to start making people feel like their whole relationship's at risk.
Yeah.
And what do you think about people that then do cheat and use that as a reason?
Yeah.
I mean, that happens in Christian marriages a lot. That
Yeah.
happens in marriage a lot.
Yeah. I think people have to understand that sex wasn't this like concept that was made by humans. The concept of sex was made by God.
Yes.
Like the actual, like the whole thing was, it was a concept that was designed by God. And so I think what we've done is we've taken this concept that was clearly created for a situation within the confines of marriage, and we've almost taken it from God and we've made it our own. Like it's an us thing, like this belongs to me, you know? So we use it and abuse it and we do it, you know?
I think we've tried to redefine it.
We've tried to redefine it. And I think that, you know, the culture today is it's very loose with this too. It's your body, you do what you want. Like no one should tell you, you know, and obviously the sovereignty of God and this whole faith thing, it's coming under, you know, the will of God and the way he's structured things, you know, biblically for us so that we can live life, you know, in abundance and blessed and favored, and a life that's safe within the confines of his will, which people can see that as super restricting because I don't want God to tell me how to live my life.
I want to say something to that because my journey was exactly what you're saying. It was like, I didn't abstain from it because I just thought it was rules that maybe carried some wisdom.
Yes.
But like, I didn't understand. I want to just say, like, don't do this blindly. Like, seek understanding on everything you live in God.
Yeah.
Because he's not making blind rules to flex his authority. That's what people will argue with religion, and that's what people will say about God. Right. And it comes from ignorance. It's the same idea that we all have before we understand things, that, well, how can the Bible be true? Yeah, it is the most proven historical document that exists today, with all sorts of, you know, burdens of proof on it. Again, a common myth is people would dismiss faith because they're like, well, how do we know the Bible's real? And that is one of the easiest actual answers that you could ever give if you do a bit of research and figure that out. And I think the same thing goes with, like, all right, no sex. You just can't make God this cosmic, like, flex, making you bend to his, you know, will. Like, you got to understand, like we would with anything these days, is I think people are searching for answers, and you'll watch people always look for design. Like, that's why people come up with all sorts of crazy diets and also we want to get better. And I think you got to do that with God.
I don't think people, maybe they don't truly understand how maybe weathered they've become with the particular lifestyle of, like, having sex outside of marriage, because I think we live in a day and age where people are so busy and they don't stop, and they're jumping from partner to partner to partner, that if they were to just stop for a season, they would and just sit in their thoughts and sit in their loneliness and sit with the sense of, like, just processing everything. I think people would truly understand the depth of, like, the pit that they've put themselves in by having, like, multiple partners and having this lifestyle, you know? I don't think they stop. I don't think people want to stop because they don't want to be left.
Turning though, because I've watched a lot of people, like, whether it be on TikTok or Instagram, that are not Christians, talk about the subject of abstinence and talk about this sense of controlling their body and urges and waiting. And even something, there's so much conversation now about, like, what is the value add of a person? You can't just be pretty. You can't just be handsome. Like, so it feels like, I think this is why, again, even it's been our biggest growth here as a church, and anyone I talk to seems to be the same. I think culture, we said earlier in the last podcast, sets the standard.
Right.
But when culture sets the standard, it also falls short. And I think people are sick of falling short. And I think people are starting to ask questions on, like, this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
And and I think there's a shift. So, I think what I'm passionate about this subject or this podcast is that maybe as we go in through the weeks, we can really dive into like what that looks like.
For sure.
So that people are empowered because there's more. There's definitely more.
I think where I was trying to go with all of that was to just kind of give some expression around the fact that like we need to understand God and the why behind things that he tells us to abstain from, or sexual immorality. There's so many things in the Bible, abstain or stay away from sexual immorality, stay away. Because obviously there's consequences to everything, right? And if you only see God as like this rule-making cosmic killjoy, I think you'll miss his heart and you'll miss his intention for humanity. And I think to the topic of dating well, I think you have to understand God. You have to understand who he is. You have to understand that he is love and that he loves us, and that there is a structure in place for us to follow so that we can truly understand the why behind what we believe. Yeah, you can decide to go, oh, my girlfriend and I, we're not gonna have sex because we want to date well. But that conviction will only last so long. I think that needs to be backed up with a backbone of a why. Why
100%.
is this? Why is it important for us to not engage in this without a legal contract binding us together? You know, and I think that's up to the individual to go on a journey and understand who God is and like the why behind all of this. And I think if you can understand that, then I think you can do it well.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you can do it
That's
well.
what I was saying. Like I just thought it was just rules.
Yeah.
And then when I started to kind of realize that my way was just leaving me empty or it wasn't feeling right, and I'm just by chance sitting and preaching and they're talking about things, you start to go, oh, that actually that's looking like the answer that I'm looking for. So I think that's big. Do you want to do some questions?
Sure.
All right. So what topics should couples discuss before getting engaged?
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of put myself in that position a little bit because it's like your first date. Are you going deep? Are you talking about
You go too
purpose,
deep,
will?
and then
Are you talking about relationship,
You
like
scare
with
someone
God,
off.
faith? Are you,
Yeah.
you know? But is it like a good way to scare the wrong person off? Like maybe that might not be a bad thing. I think
you know what I think is good about that? Be your most authentic self and be honest about where you're at and what you're ready for, because you're trying to find someone at your pace,
yes,
not trying to basically rope someone in. So I don't think it matters about the scaring off, this, that, and the other. I think just be real with where you're at,
yeah,
because that's what you want to do. Like no games, cut to the chase.
yeah,
There's obviously an art to winning people over,
Yeah.
and the romance and the chase and the pursuit.
yeah,
But I think talk about it all.
yeah.
Talk about it, but also think, I don't know, there is wisdom to it though, right? Like you just go for coffee and all of a sudden it's like, how many babies do you want? It's like,
Well, I mean, yeah, that could be weird.
you're gonna disagree with me, and then you're like, actually
That could be a
no,
little.
that is
little
not.
weird.
So
Just too much.
Pretty much,
Not
if
too
I say
much.
something and then Odds agrees to it, it's probably good because I'm kind of the one that takes us off track. What are some red flags that should not be ignored during dating?
I want to really think about that one. I think some girls, and I'll speak from the female perspective, I think girls are really good
Knock
at
myself
noticing the red flags to begin with. But I think in hopes of this working out, they're willing to just,
They love a project.
they love a project. And I think a major red flag is,
I can change him.
yep, absolutely.
My dad always said, if you can't change your people, change your people.
Yeah.
So if they ain't changing,
Yeah. I
you know
think
what's dangerous about that? If you keep wanting someone to change and they don't change, and you don't, and you stick around for that, you're basically giving them license and freedom and confidence that change is no longer necessary. And I think that doesn't matter in some things, you know, like in the sense of like, you know, you got to pick your fights, like what matters.
Yeah.
But I've watched a lot of couples, like what often comes up when we do like marriage situations that we're trying to help people get back together, they always say it started when we were dating.
Yeah. I also think a red flag too is that you see the things that are there, but you're like, oh, this could get better. Obviously that project mentality, but I'm speaking more so from like the emotional soft spaces, that the connections where you're like, I value communication. I value intimacy in the form of conversation. I value just time spent like that. And if there's a guy that is just not interested and disengaged in like hearing your heart on things, that for me is a red flag, because that, you know, if they're not showing it where they're presenting a spotless resume to you, that probably is not going to reveal itself when you're married. Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe he's just like not trying to go there because he doesn't want to make that investment because
I don't think he's thinking at that
he's
level.
not thinking. Yeah. Well, you probably,
I don't think
know,
so. I don't know. I
you
just
know
don't
more
think
than me,
he's
I
that
guess.
strategic.
Yeah.
I think he's like that movie, just not that into you.
He's just not that into you. Oh my gosh. Can we like, I get really passionate about this.
I hear the chord there.
Because I think some girls, they're just trying to make something work. I'm like, sweetheart, he's just not that into you.
Oh,
And
look
that's
into the camera.
Okay. It's okay. He's not for you.
Yes.
It's okay. Like, don't make it happen. Don't appease. Don't change. Don't bow down to this. Like, he's just not that into you. Move on.
Move on. There you go. What other red flags? I don't know.
What about from a guy's perspective?
I don't know. Nothing that comes to mind straight away because I haven't dated in a long time.
Yeah.
But I think I think in general, guy or girl, be very open, go into it with open eyes as to what is there without, this is one. This is what I would say. This is both a rule for dating and it's one for avoiding red flags. And it's this, I don't have a better term for this. This term's usually used in a really ugly context, but don't groom them. Like, don't lead them down a route. Be careful. Keep some of your cards close to your chest as to what you love, what you want in a significant other. Because the minute you give, it's almost like when you've gone for a job, right? And they say, man, we love a self-starter. And you're like, that's funny. I do nothing but self-start. I got myself here. Like, you just start selling. Yeah. And I think a lot of people do that a lot. And I've watched it as we've watched people date. They're like they're leading the witness, if you will. They're like constantly saying stuff like, man, I just really want a wife that. I just really want a husband that. And they just start playing that at that place because we all as humans hate not being the one selected. And sometimes people are dating, not even because they even like each other. They just want to be the one for each other. Like, I want to be selected. And so all of a sudden, by giving too much away of what you want, I would say play those cards closer to your chest. I think the worst thing you could do on a first date is say all the things you're looking for in a man, all the things you're looking for in a woman. I think get about doing the date, just have fun, talk, love, just do things, go on the third, fourth, go for a few months and just see what they are without you telling them what you want them to be, because you've just lost your only good hand. You're already going to be romantically blinded. Love is blind. And if you've also told them what you're looking for, they're 100% going to play that role.
Yeah.
And I just think kind of keep some things close to your chest. Don't give it all away because you've already just shaped and changed the environment and you're no longer really looking at them for who they are.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is, I think as a girl, like if you're with a girl, I always wanted a girl that was really good at letting me lead her, but strong enough to help me when I'm down. That sense of a partnership, but we know our places biblically and just synergistically. So I think that's some of my things. I think we are out of time.
Yes.
I think next week we want to talk about marriage. Can you turn it around? We're probably going to just jump in on any of the feedback we get, as well as what the people want to know.
Yes.
And I hope that this helps. We see a lot where we just did a series and we spoke about, it was, where is God in all of this? And this being completely relative to basically your worst day, feeling almost betrayed that God didn't show up. And that's why most people have a faith crisis. They just don't believe and can't imagine how a God that is good and all control and all powerful could live in a world where either they're overwhelmed by the compassion, because right now there's a lot of people with compassion fatigue. Everything's in our faces. We're supposed to have a stance on everything. And then just people just navigating their own pain and worst day, and where was God in it? And that was a great series. But what we segued with this relationship series was that we have seen that the most common catalyst to someone's worst day is always tied to relationships, like romantic relationships, who they marry, who they've left, who's betrayed them, all those things. And so our goal in this is hopefully to equip you and empower you to just maybe learn from our insight, learn from some of the things we've gone through, ask questions, and hopefully set you up for everything that God's got for you, and just a great marriage and a great relationship and some peace. So hope it speaks to you. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.